Today, we are going to talk about the newly released DJI Avata and explain where this drone sits in terms of the UK drone rules. There are a couple of very exciting possibilities that will make this little silly whoop uniquely popular with UK drone flyers, so stay tuned for that. You might also be surprised to find out there is a pretty simple way to get similar access to airspace that you can currently fly your sub 250 gram drones in, such as the DJI Mini 3 Pro. This video will focus on what you need to do now as of 2022. We'll not be looking at potential changes in the future as they are still currently up for review at the moment. This video is specifically intended to help UK flyers of the new DJI Avata FPV drone to understand what the rules are and how to get the most from their new drone. For more general information on the UK drone rules, you can watch our video linked in the description, which explains the UK hobby rules in under 8 minutes. Despite the fact that the UK drone rules can seem a little intimidating at first, do not let this put you off. Once you are well versed on the rules, you will find yourself flying with a lot of confidence, as you know exactly where you can fly. One way to get that confidence level is by learning the rules specifically for the drone you're going to be flying. It's good to have knowledge of the rules in general, and the UK drone code from the CAA can help you get there. But having a deeper understanding of the rules for a specific drone can minimize the knowledge you need to retain and get you flying with confidence. Hopefully, after today, you'll feel confident in knowing the rules for the DJI Avata FPV drone. But if you do have any comments, if you do have any questions, etc., please do let us know in the comments. First up, and let's take a look at the registration side of things. You'll need to complete both parts of the CAA DMARES scheme, or the Drone and Model Aircraft Registration and Education Scheme. Was drone registration just too simple a name? Anyway, if you visit the CAA website shown on screen now and linked in the description, you'll be able to learn all about the drone code and register with the scheme. As the Avata weighs in at over 400 grams, you will need both an operator ID and a flyer ID. The operator ID is the drone registration number effectively, and you will need to display this number on the drone. Many people put this in the battery compartment for neatness and privacy, which is absolutely fine. The only thing you need to do to get the operator ID is give the CAA your information and confirm you are the person responsible for the drone. Oh, and £10 per year, but this ID number can be put on all of your drones. So if you already own a Mini 3 or another drone, you probably have an operator ID already. The second part of the scheme is the flyer ID. This bit covers you rather than the drone and looks to ensure that you have the basic knowledge required to fly a drone safely. There's a multiple choice test here of 40 questions with a pass mark of just 30. It is not intended to tax the brain, and all of the answers are actually within the same website. Really, what the CAA want you to know here, I think, is that you have retained the important information and that you're safe to fly. You do not need to display this number on the drone. As you might be aware, you are required to keep your drone within line of sight at all times. There's a lot of debate about what this actually means out there, but the UK CAA give general guidance distance of 500 meters as a maximum, but as the Avata is pretty small, you're going to need to adjust that for your own eyesight and confidence. Factors such as weather and obstructions should actually be considered when deciding how far out you're going to fly. You could fly this drone in line of sight with the app running on your phone attached to the controller. However, the DJI Avata is intended as an FPV drone, so this by definition means you are likely to fly the drone using first-person view through DJI goggles like these. If you fly the drone this way, you are immediately out of line of sight as you cannot see your drone flying with your own eyes. Now, to get around this issue, the rules state that you need a visual observer with you when you fly, or a so-called spotter. This person needs to stand next to you and watch the drone in flight, the airspace around it, and look out for anyone approaching during takeoff and landing. As with normal visual line of sight, they cannot use binoculars or anything, just their own eyes. You are responsible for briefing this visual observer, and it is still you as the pilot who are solely responsible for the drone flight. So make sure you have a good level of trust in the person you choose to spot for you. Before we move on to the airspace you can fly the DJI Avata in within the UK, including a very cool way to get access to some exciting airspace, I want to talk quickly about the main difference this type of drone brings in terms of safety requirements. Being an FPV drone, it is likely to be flown at much lower levels and much faster than any camera drone you have flown before. So this means you are more likely to come across people and obstacles. Also, if you have ever played a flight simulator online, you'll know well that your perception of distance and speed can be very different when you change your view around. Inside the goggles, you will notice a lot of changes, and I highly recommend you make a lot of flights away from people and obstacles to get used to the new sensations and flight style. In particular, things like stopping distances can be very deceptive. When we fly our camera drones, it feels like the drone almost stops instantly when we ask it to. But when flying FPV at higher speeds, the time between your thought to stop the drone being transferred by actions to your hands on the controller and then onto the drone itself can mean you end up with a much longer braking zone effectively than you might think. This isn't an issue when you're flying your Mini 3 at 200 feet up, but with the Avata at much lower heights, you need to be careful. I would suggest a quick risk assessment before each flight to assess where people are and obstacles which might be a problem. Remember good old Article 241 and our responsibility as drone pilots to fly in a safe and responsible manner. Next up, the exciting bit, where can you fly the DJI Avata? Well, straight out of the box and with you and your drone registered correctly with operator and flyer ID, you can fly the drone within the A3 subcategory. This means far from people, so away from town centres, villages, industrial estates, etc. Picking a field and flying type of situation. You will not immediately get the same access to the A1 airspace you might be used to with your Mini 2 or 3, as this drone weighs over 250 grams. There are two ways around this. Both will cost you a little money, but will open up more places to fly your DJI Avata from. Firstly, you can study for and pass the A2 Certificate of Competency, or the A2 CofC for short. This certificate is issued by the CAA and you can study for it with any of the approved training companies, costing anywhere really from around £50 to over £100, depending on the company and course type. This then allows you to fly drones weighing less than 2 kilograms in the A2 airspace with 50 meters separation of uninvolved people. It doesn't sound too exciting, does it? 50 meters from people? Well, I have some great news on that. For those people who have chosen to go out and get their A2 CofC, you get some special access to the A1 airspace. So within congested areas like towns with zero minimum separation of uninvolved people, if you're flying a drone that has a flying weight of less than 500 grams. So it means in basic terms, with an A2 certificate, you can fly the DJI Avata everywhere you can fly the Mini 3 or other sub 250 gram drones, but with one important difference: no intentional flights over people. What does no intentional flights over people mean? Well, put simply, you will need to assess whether or not the flight you are about to take is going to need to fly over people, or if you can fly around them. You've got zero minimum separation in this instance, so that does help a little. If you do fly over someone, you should take immediate action to stop and return to safe airspace. So that is the first way you can fly more places with your DJI Avata drone and get some amazing footage. The second way is to gain access to what is called the Article 16 Authorisation. The UK CAA provided an authorisation to groups like FPVUK to allow their members to fly drones in areas that mainly are used for leisure. So, for instance, parks and beaches, etc. This includes parks within congested areas, so it can help you fly in some fun places. There are restrictions, such as not being able to fly outside of the park or leisure area, and you have to maintain a separation of 30 meters as a bubble from uninvolved people. But with FPV UK for £20 a year, you get a lot of other benefits, including public liability insurance. Also, being a member of FPV UK supports an organisation that actually does a lot for the hobby. For a more detailed look at Article 16 and FPV, see the links in the description to my interviews with the founder, Simon Dale. Next up, and we have a few extra tips and points to help you get the most out of your DJI Avata and again fly with more confidence. First up, always carry out pre and post-flight checks of the drone. You might be surprised how contact with bugs and debris can actually damage your props, etc. quite easily. So check regularly that everything is working correctly and in top shape. Replace your props at any sign of wear and tear to avoid a much more expensive issue if they fail during flight. This should be done more regularly than with camera drones because you're more likely to contact things with your props at lower flight altitudes and have heavy landings, etc. When flying your drone, keep a keen ear and eye out for emergency service helicopters such as air ambulances. These will approach quickly and will have to halt their flight or take evasive action to avoid your drone. If this does happen, firstly, hover your drone in place and assess what action should be taken, often including, of course, dropping height or landing where the drone is. But hover and assess first. Don't let the weather catch you and your DJI Avata out. Remember, it is not rated to fly in anything other than dry conditions. So be aware that fog, mist or rain could cause the drone to fail or act erratically. With cheaper consumer drones, you are playing a lottery in terms of moisture ingress and whether or not it might cause an issue. Remember, of course, to follow the rest of the drone code and use apps like Drone Assist to check for any flight restrictions. There you have the main rules you need to know to fly your DJI Avata in the UK as a hobbyist. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Remember to please give this video a like, and if you're new here, hit the subscribe button. Oh, and here's a video that YouTube thinks you're going to want to watch next. Were they right? Sean out.